The hosts feel it would be a little unkind to present this podcast without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now's your chance to. Well, we've warned you. Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the scuzzy guy that's named after your cousin, that is Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him.
And we're joined by a very special guest today.
Good friend of the show.
Yes, welcome, Mr. Tim Kirk. Welcome back.
Hi, guys. I am so happy to be back.
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
I had a great time talking with you guys about Terror Frankenstein, and then it just went.
Yeah, we were, I know when we had talked last, you mentioned a couple other projects you had, and it was like, they're not really Frankenstein related, but we like talking to you. We'd love to get you back on to talk about what you're up to.
Okay, cool. And then I do have some Frankenstein stuff I wanted to run by you guys.
Ooh, okay.
We're here for it.
Yeah, so what should we start with?
So your most recent project, you've got the Miami Vice incident?
Yeah. That's a short I made it was started before the pandemic and ended after the pandemic,
right.
So you can understand. But it's out there playing a lot of festivals. It was in Aspen, and it's going down to Melbourne, and in between Miami and.
Gotta play Miami, right?
Yeah, of course. That was a gimme, and of course I forgot it until last minute. I was like, oh fuck, yeah, Miami has a festival.
So, what inspired this? Like, is John kind of a friend, or is what?
Yeah, I was actually at the party with Tim.
Oh, you were there at Ground Zero.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I was, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, it's about a 35-year rift that was caused between two friends. It was in a family because of a Miami Vice incident. And basically, Tim, who was my friend at college, his uncle was a story editor on the show, and he called up Tim and said, hey, I got a new episode. You really ought to watch it. And I think, why don't you have a party? And so then, so we did, and we're all kind of wondering, oh, what's going to happen? And then it turns out there's a character named Tim Davis, and he's just this real scumbag. And the great opening is when they Don and Tubbs. So Tubbs and Crockett chase him across the beach into the water, and Don's grabbing him and chasing him and shaking him and saying like, "Who are you? What's your name?" And he goes, "I'm Tim Davis." and then he basically you find out that he's the brother of this girl that died, and they tell him that the girl's dead, and he immediately goes, "Oh, where's the body?" Because there's some drugs in there that he wanted to get. So this is now like maybe a minute and a quarter into his character on the show. He's already got him and then Crockett punches him. So it was everybody's laughing, and Tim took it really hard.
Yeah.
And I sort of never forgot about it, because like 10 years later, I was watching late night TV, and I was not even late night. It was just a rerun. And I was like, oh, hey, and I called Tim, hey, your show's on. And he was like, don't go there, brother. I don't want to. And I was like, whoa, this has stuck.
Right. So that's what that got your like story sniffer going, right?
Exactly. A mystery to be solved. So we do it, and it goes a lot of interesting places.
It does. So, by the way, I don't know if we mentioned this. This is the Miami Vice episode, season 2, episode 14, Yankee Dollar, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
That's correct.
So yeah, and like I get it. Like from one perspective, you know, I've been written into the show as a scumbag, basically, and you know, I'm the punching bag of this episode.
Yeah.
And my uncle or cousin, was it his uncle?
It was cousin, but he was like 7 years older. He kind of looked up to him a lot.
Yeah. He looked up to him like an uncle, effectively.
Definitely.
And it's like, oh, I thought we were close, but you're just beating me up in this.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But John was like, well, I just thought, you know, it was nice to name, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was my feeling at the time. I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. And he was like, no way.
Right. But it also seems like there's an event that happened with Tim and his mother that also kind of was triggered by that.
Definitely. His mother died at a young age and was hit by a car, and Tim was standing next to her when she got killed. So pretty tragic.
And I believe he even mentioned survivor guilt.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's like, rough to get over.
Yeah, it seemed like I like the way that the movie kind of like the short sneaks up on you. Like you think this is like just like a silly little anecdote, and then like you kind of see that like sometimes, you know, there are big things that happen to us that affect us in like hidden ways, and then small things that will have a big impact, and the way that those things can kind of intersect in really interesting ways.
Yeah. It was interesting for me too, as these two guys have moved on and were, you know, they're still very close, but the wound was not closed. I mean, when I started talking to Tim about it, I mean, he was, you know, he went there, you know, quickly, you know. So that's just like, it's like, I don't know, like with the El Duce tapes, it's a similar thing of like, this is something I need to finish. And like the El Duce tapes, we shot all this footage and then it disappeared and I couldn't do anything with it. And 20 years later, I'm like, let's make a movie finally, you know.
Right.
And it was similar with this. It was like, this has always bugged me. It's like, what the hell was going on there? You know, why did this hurt so much?
It seems like both of those were kind of projects that like, maybe like you might have wanted to get to them sooner, but maybe they like kind of came about at the right time because like, you know, watching some of the bonus stuff on the El Duce tapes, it seemed like you had those like primary source tapes for a while, but then when you finally sat down to make that's when like all these secondary sources and other tapes that you didn't know about started surfacing, and that's what really kind of brought it all together.
I think so. And I don't know what, I mean, it was funny it premiered at Hot Docs in Toronto, and a guy I know who I really like, and smart programmer, and he was like, you know, he really liked it, but he was like, when you were shooting this, what were your thoughts with this? What were you going to do with it? And I was like, God, he really, you know, in retrospect, I was like, I don't know what the hell I could have done with it. You know, I just wanted to do it. So now I had a better opportunity to actually get it done and get it out there.
Yeah, sometimes you just know something special and you don't really know in what way just yet until the right thing hits you.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I feel like, you know, not to like shoehorn Frankenstein into everything, but like, you know, the El Duce tapes are definitely like a Frankenstein project of like, you collected all of these things, you know, you've got people who are, you know, long dead, bands that are no longer together, and you stitched all this stuff together into something that, you know, it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Oh, I love that. I kind of wonder if there's, you know, I don't know if this has ever really been done with the Frankenstein. You guys tell me you know more about, you've watched more films than I have at this point, but if it's about the creation of creation of a person, right? Or and then that person gets out of control and ruins your life, right? Has it ever been done as the creation of a persona? Because it's kind of that in El Duce case. He made up this character of El Duce as being this, lewd, loud guy, right? And he was just a little drummer in the honors band in Seattle, right? And then it just kind of took over, and that monster kind of killed him,
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like something like that has been done, but not exactly in that way.
I definitely thought about like the quote from the novel that's like, if I can't inspire love, I will create fear.
Yeah.
And it definitely like going like hearing his like childhood and like some of his like early days, it was like this is a guy who has had to kind of create a persona to get by in the world.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's more to be done with that idea,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like there's the Kurt Vonnegut quote from Mother Night that's, we are who we pretend to be, so we must be careful who we pretend to be, or something along those lines.
Right.
You kind of, if you make a persona for yourself, like you said, that ends up, you end up becoming that for real.
And I've walked that line a little bit with, with the Christian puppetry thing that I did that turned into the book that I wrote. And I'm like, I'm just pretending to be a puppeteer, and then I ended up on a Muppet show for, and I was like, what happened here? It's like,
Right.
So
you got to perform with the Muppets?
Yeah, I did. It was pretty wild. It was an in-house pilot for a reality show that they were going to do called America's Next Muppet.
Oh, amazing.
And it was based exactly on the show, okay? So Kermit was, who's the guy who introduced everybody, right? So would that be Seacrest? I don't know the show.
Ryan Seacrest, or just the MC or whatever.
Yeah, the MC.
Yeah.
And then they had 3 judges, and it was Piggy,
of course,
Fozzie, and one I don't know as well, the prawn. Little prawn.
Oh, Pepe.
Yeah.
Pepe. Right. And so they had all these. They got puppeteers, and then they got me, and then we waited in this room, and they're filming us and everything, and then we go in, and every time people would come out, I used to smoke at the time. I was sitting out front, and they had gotten these 2 celebrity puppeteers, which was David Arquette and Pee-wee.
Okay.
Yeah. So they came out, and they were like white and shaking, and they were like, "Have you guys done this yet?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Piggy is just so awful, so mean, And like they were like staggering around. And so I went in, and she was really terrible. She was she was the Simon, I guess. Okay. But I mean, like, life's goal is standing backstage and Kermit going, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tim Kirk."
Right.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. That's really cool.
And the bit was, I had a Satan doll that I made for another project.
Yeah.
And so I had these lame jokes like, what kind of food do you like? I like soul food. Oh. Do you like the taste or something? It's, no, I like souls. And then I wasn't really a puppeteer, so the best I got, I was like, okay, I'm going to work one move. Mm-hmm. So I had that where he could take his hand from across his chest out like this. So then he would go, "What can I do? I'm evil." So I did it. I just did that gag like 3 or 4 times, and then they ended, and everyone was pretty nice. And Miss Piggy was like, I'm really worried about you. Do you live alone? And I said, yeah, no, with the puppet. And then she was like, get him out of here.
So wait a second. So this was this Frank Oz as Piggy or a different?
No, it was post Frank Oz. So it was. It's a guy, I've seen him on these like Sesame Street movies and things. I don't think he started with Piggy, obviously, but he took over at some point.
Okay. Can you give us a roundabout the year of that? I'm just curious.
The whole thing, it came down in, I think, 2003.
2003, okay.
Yeah.
And so it never went beyond the pilot?
No, and I was really excited.
Yeah, that would have been great.
I know. It would have been a good series.
Yeah, especially at the time, American Idol just taking off and all that. And,
totally. Yeah. And from being backstage, I mean, puppeteers are weirdos, so, a lot to be done,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was around the same time you were doing your experiment with like writing all of the plays and that wedding proposal thing.
Yeah. I started writing these Christian puppet plays on this. It was like a site where you could upload your plays, and then people could download them for their Sunday school class or this or that, right? And so I just started writing them. They were so much fun. So I got like all my like if you guys had known me at the time, I would have made you write a puppet play, put it up there. So I got all these really interesting. Would you been in?
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was a kid, I was part of a puppet troupe at my church for a little bit.
No way.
Yeah. This would have been like, I don't know, like 97 or 90, something like mid 90s anyway.
Wow. I think that was before my reign. Puppet to Puppet was the theater. What was do you remember any of the shows you guys put on?
I was trying to think. I don't remember any of the specifics. I remember I had a puppet that had like a football shaped head, like it was really wide, and he was like blue. But I don't remember much about it. I was, it was just it's just funny to me that like I just thought that was just something silly that like they did at my church, but then seeing that there's this whole subculture, this whole world that you kind of like dug into is pretty fantastic.
It's totally a big world. There's a whole world to it. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah. Then I did a bunch of puppet stuff, and then I wrote this character named Joe McPuppet, I wrote a book, and it's about his adventures, sort of leaving a puppet-based world, a Christian puppet-based world, and going to LA for a while.
Amazing.
Yeah, I read that several months back, and it's interesting. I've read two of your books and how drastically different they both are in terms of just the writing style and everything, like the way that you're able to like embody that character. Like Joe McPuffet is definitely not you. Like he's he has like the brain injury, and like the way that he writes is very unique and specific to his own language. And it like really draws you in. Like you feel like this is a real person who I'm reading his journals.
Yeah, memoirs.
Well, thanks, man. That's great. I'm glad to hear that.
And for those who are wanting to find this book, it's The Disappointing Near Death of Joe McPuppet. That's one of them.
Christ never showed a disappointing near death of Joe McPuppet. Yeah, and his life afterwards, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. I would highly recommend.
No, thanks. What was your other book that you read?
Burnt.
Yeah, well, that's very different.
Yeah, that one's obviously a lot more stark and like a lot less humor to it. But Absolutely. Also, I mean, just it's definitely about being a father and not being a father myself. There like it was interesting kind of reading that. Like it's not something I fully relate to, but you really get it on the page that like that desire for protection that is, like at all costs, I thought it was very, very powerful.
Well, thanks. And and I wrote that when my daughter was really young, and I wrote it, and I just would write every night. I would just write a short blurb, which became a chapter. So that's why it's sort of broken up like that. Did a lot of work to sort of put it all together later. But I was definitely thinking about that and my own father and all that stuff.
So that would have been I know you said Terror of Frankenstein was also sort of like inspired by fatherhood. So
yes, and
definitely like taken that inspiration and done some really interesting stuff with it.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks. And I do find myself running to Frankenstein when I'm having thoughts about fatherhood. Like my dad was recently out, and then I was like, I'm reading all these books again, and it's like,
right.
I don't know if that relates. If you guys can relate to that, or
yeah. You said your father passed away.
No, he's just been sort of in and out of my life. And so I hadn't seen him in a while, and then
out to see you.
To see me. I'm sorry. He came to California, and I hadn't seen him in like 14 years. So it was like, very like, whoa, what is this? So
right.
But then I kind of laughing to myself. I was like, wow, boom, deep dive into Frankenstein.
I mean, it is a story about a father and son, whether, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And a son who is like estranged from his father for many years. So it makes sense why that you would draw to that at that time.
Yeah. I've been listening to some of your guys' older stuff, and I was really, really glad to run. I guess you guys are on fire you're always on fire.
Thank you.
I thought, especially during the decade year film.
70, 80, 90.
Yeah, you guys are killing me.
Thank you.
But also, I really loved what you talked about, the true story of Frankenstein. Because it's the gay one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, but it's also the first time I'd seen, at least in watching them, that Frankenstein was taking any care about the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that one is really special for that. Just like the shoe's gonna drop eventually, but that like window where like everything's perfect is really interesting.
Yeah, it's so heartbreaking when he's starting to decay, and he comes up and he's doing his little dance of like pouring tea or something that was tricky, and Frankenstein's like disgusted with him, and
just rejects him.
Yeah,
really tough.
Yeah, really. I feel like that father-son type relationship of just like suddenly being like, wait, why does my parent not care about me anymore? Like, what have I done? Like,
upset dad.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it's sort of missing from a lot of the stuff, I think, but it's a different focus, obviously.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, that's why we have had so much fun doing this, is just finding like every creator puts their own spin on this. They find the thing that speaks to them about the story, and they build on it.
There's literally millions of lenses to view Frankenstein through.
I know.
Literally and figuratively.
And what are your theories?
I mean, at what point? I mean, I got lots of. Listen, we don't have all day now. My first one is I want to see I want justice for Ernest. Okay, Ernest Frankenstein has to get his own movie at some point.
Somebody told us that there is a novel that focuses on Ernest. I've not gotten my hands on it, but I'm very curious to see what that would be like, because he's the most overshadowed character in the entire story. Like, a lot of the women are kind of pushed to the side, but even more so, Ernest is like mentioned like twice or something, and it's just completely an afterthought.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Middle child syndrome, I guess.
Right, and then maybe just seeing the DeLacy story, like up until the creature moves into their house.
I know, that's with that crazy subplot with the woman who's staying with it, Sassy or
Safi, yeah.
Safi. Seems like really overly. It just doesn't seem necessary to go that deeply into that character. You know,
the whole adventure story before
yeah, the Turkish,
prison escape and all that. Yeah, it does seem like, you know, Mary Shelley definitely had some like things she wanted to put across that maybe don't necessarily fit with like the basic plot structure of the film, but she was just like, you know, I think this is important, so I'm going to put it in there.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe she had a whole like Frankenstein literature universe designed and just never got to it.
Oh, Safi was going to show up later.
Right.
Wow.
She's going to get her own movie later.
Right.
Wow.
Which I do think that that's part of why there's been so many interpretations, is there are these little threads that you're like, well, you know, I could pull on that. Like you can just write Safi and the DeLacy's out of your version of the movie if you want, or you're like, well, that kind of intrigues me. I want to see where that goes. And she like Mary Shelley kind of gives you a lot of off ramps to explore, you know, depending on, you know, what your interest in the story is.
Yeah. That's so funny because I know, like, early on in my thinking about Frankenstein was wanting to see a pure version, a version that was like the novel, or, and in my mind was the story of Frankenstein, you know. Mm-hmm. But the more I've seen them, you know, I kind of feel like I think that's a stupid quest, really. I mean, it's interesting, and I'm glad to have seen a couple that did it. But I think it's more interesting what people do with the template of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It seems like all of the ones that are kind of touted as being like more faithful, the part that the thing that always excites me the most in those is those moments when it's not faithful. It's like those deviations. I mean, like the Kenneth Branagh one, you know, like when he introduces like Elizabeth as the bride of Frankenstein and stuff, like that's, you know, obviously completely out of the novel, and it's like it's really jarring and exciting, and it just like takes you to a different place.
Yeah, I totally like that. So this brings me to the thing I wanted to run by you guys. So I've been reading sort of the history of Frankenstein after she finished it, and the series of plays that came out, and then the films, and obviously. But here's the big thing that I discovered, and you guys may be onto this, but that the first play was called Presumption and the Fate of Frankenstein or something by like Richard Peake. And it was like 1922 or something, 1822. So shortly after it was published. And he introduces 5 or 6 elements that have now become basically canon for Frankenstein in his first book. And the moment this first play, and the moment that happened, every play and then every movie kind of incorporated these things that weren't in the Shelley at all.
Okay.
So I have the list, and let's see what you guys think about it. My thought was, are we glad it's there, or would we rather it wasn't, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
So here we go. So the first thing he created was Fritz.
Yeah. So I just yeah, that's very interesting, is that he basically created effectively an Igor before Igor.
Yeah. And it just ran. It really went boom. He's got an assistant, you know?
Yeah. And then the evolution of Fritz into Igor with Bela Lugosi's character in the movie. What was that? It was
Ghost of?
Ghost.
Good.
Was it Ghost?
I think it was Ghost, where he take, and then they put him in. Well, he's in both, 2 of them, right?
Yeah, he's in Sun and Ghost. I think.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that you know, when you have a book and you can be inside Victor's head, you don't really need that character. But then, yeah, as soon as you take it off the page, like it makes perfect sense that you need somebody for Victor to be talking to, bounce ideas off of.
It's always great for him to have a henchman, right?
Yeah. And I guess comedy.
Oh, yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah.
So that's number one, and interesting to me. This is kind of cool. In this play, Frankenstein, when he sees the monster for the first time, says, "It lives, it lives."
Ah.
Oh, wow.
So he put that seed in there.
So did we have confirmation that the basically the first Universal movie cribbed from this?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we talked about it, but at one point, but.
Yeah, I think there's like a couple of plays that Universal borrowed from for Frankenstein and also for Dracula. I think they both definitely had their but like that's why like
stuff, yeah.
Just that because the creation scene is such a small moment in the novel. Like Mary doesn't really dwell on it at all.
Barely.
But it's cool that like just right away he was like, no, this is an important part and we need to dwell on it and give it, the grandiose kind of moment that it needs.
Yeah. And from what I understand, it's just like Presumption was a huge hit, and so the people that were cribbing off it to make the next one, they usually threw Presumption into the title. They'd be like The Mechanical Man or A Tale of Presumption or something like that,
Okay.
So boom, it's in there. It's canon, basically, right?
Right.
So that was interesting, and I love it. Okay, this one, Mute Monster, that he created that the monster doesn't speak.
Oh.
And they didn't speak until that weird one that we watched, the werewolf one, right? That they were going to have him speak through,
right,
with Lugosi's voice.
Yeah, was that was Ghost, right? Or is that?
It is in Ghost,
and then in the follow-up.
Oh, right, yeah.
Wolfman.
Yes, you're right. It is Frankenstein because they cut all the dialogue out after the fact and everything. That's when
that would have been interesting to actually have that dialogue in there with Igor, controlling the monster.
It would have, and then I think every film after that probably would have been a talking Frankenstein.
Yeah.
That would have definitely changed the trajectory of Frankenstein on film.
So I'm of two minds of this, right?
Please.
So first off, it's really cool that we kind of got the mute to begin with, right? Because every time you hear him talk, it's like that's something special.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, it wouldn't have been. It's just he knows how to talk and he does his thing. So I think it's like, you don't expect it in pop culture nowadays, but it's
Yeah,
like the arc between the two Karloff, the first two Karloff movies where like, he doesn't speak in Frankenstein, and then in Bride he like is learning to speak. Like there's something really powerful about like being in those moments where he's got a child's vocabulary, and like as the movie progresses he gets a little better and everything. Mm-hmm. I do wish that was maybe explored a little bit more, because the novel, it's just like we just get the creature's chapter where he's like already eloquent and he's just telling his backstory, and you don't really get like what those moments would have been like when he didn't know how to speak and was picking up words from the family through the wall and everything. Right.
I mean, I think there's that, and then also when he tries to mimic the bird. And that's interesting because it doesn't sound good to him, like when it's his voice, But I think it was interesting, and if they'd gone with it after Ghost, and it was because when that could have been an interesting, like, okay, here's a new element. Mm-hmm. He talks, and it would have been a new talking then from the beginning, where he was a child just discovering things.
Right.
This was an evil man who now he's like, with this body, I can control the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We love it. We love Igor.
Oh yeah.
Igor.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah.
I showed a couple of films to my daughter who's now like 14, and she just loved Igor. She was just like, I love that guy. He's all chaos. You know?
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you never, like, with our pop culture references, we don't think of Igor as being, like, sly and manipulative, but no, that Igor, he could charm a whole room. He could do whatever he wanted to.
Yeah, he was great. Okay, number 4 out of 6 here is he was calmed by music. He got calmed by music. There was a little flute that played in Presumption, and he sort of danced to it.
Right.
I like that. I like the music soothes the
Savage Beast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it makes it's one of those little moments of like relatability. Like it makes us kind of, everybody has a connection, or pretty much everybody feels some sort of connection to music, and I think that the idea that, like if you're in a bad mood and you put on your favorite song, you feel a little better or whatever. I think having that kind of connection with the creature makes him seem more human and less like monstrous and dangerous.
Yeah, but you're never going to top the scene with the blind guy in the Young Frankenstein movie where he's playing to begin with. So
that is the best.
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting. Towards the end of the play, Frankenstein and this army of gypsies come to get the monster. So I kind of say that's the first of the angry village or
angry mob.
And I love that. I mean, it's kind of overdone in the parody. Young Frankenstein's just flawless, but but some shit you're just like, okay, I get it. Guys with torches, but I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having that's like the thing that makes him an outcast. Like it's harder to depict that on film where, when it's just like the creature saying that, people don't like him, but like seeing that like physical embodiment of society rejecting him.
Well, not fighting back, but yes, actually attacking him.
Yeah. And then the last of my 6 nods to Richard Peake of Presumption is that it ends with a catastrophe which kills the monster. It's a snowy avalanche.
See that several times, but it always it doesn't feel good, but it always is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it leaves the door open for him returning or...
Right. And also maybe it's like, man could not kill him. But,
right. Exactly. It has to be a force of nature that does it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was something I wanted to throw you guys because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I've never read the play, but I have it on my list of things to check out because it definitely sounds like an important, like you said. I mean, it seems like it's even more than I realized is a very important piece of the Frankenstein puzzle.
Yeah,
interesting. The guy this was his only serious play. He had wrote comedies before, so. He went straight from that to a satire of his own work.
Right.
Like Fritzy was frizzy, and I think Frankenstein was a tailor or something.
Okay. Oh, isn't it called like Another Piece of Presumption or something like that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen the Presumption or Fate of Frankenstein. Like you can find that online, it's public domain, but I cannot find the Another Piece of Presumption one anywhere.
That would be fun to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To compare the two would be really interesting too.
So speaking of reading arcane stuff that's attached to Frankenstein, I've been reading the Phantasmagoria that Byron and Shelley and Mary were reading. It's like a German horror short stories, and they were reading it in these dark, nights that they were stuck in the castle. And out of it, Byron's like, let's all write one. And then, of course, the guys blew it off. But Mary
Right.
did it.
Well, and Polidori also took it seriously, but
Yeah, no, you're right.
but that's so interesting that the two like writers were like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah,
A doctor and a teenage girl were like, we're gonna go to town on this one.
totally. Especially because it's always famous that Mary has this dream of the monster, right? And that's what it scared the shit out of her, and that's why she wanted to write it. But if you read about it, Shelley had, I think, a worse thing is they read one of these stories, and he freaked out and ran out of the room, and the doctor had to chase him, they had to sedate him, and
Wow.
he just freaked out. He had like all this flashbacks from some weirdness with like some other relationships in his earlier life and stuff. So fuck, man, he could have jumped on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he had that freak out just from reading the Phantasmagoria.
Someone else was reading it out loud, and he said, I saw the image of a woman's breast with eyes. And then he ran out, and they were worried he was going to hurt himself, so they sedated him. And then he went on about some shit with like his ex-wife, and also like somebody punched him once, and
Huh.
so he was having a real thing, man. There was something was going on there.
It's almost like a PTSD flashback.
Yeah.
Totally.
Jeez. All right, Anthony, we're gonna get that and read that now. Not for the simple fact that there's a breast with an eye in it.
Yeah, the stories are pretty awful, man.
Okay.
It's, well, if unless you like people telling you this terrible, scary thing happened, but I can't tell you about it until I die, and or that kind of crap.
I'm of two minds to a degree because that's what a lot of the H.P. Lovecraft stuff was. It was so undescribable, blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
That's comical to a point, but it does also give you license to wander and like wonder about what that is. But yeah, I get it. That's cheese and schlock.
Yeah, it's really and the only version you'll get is at least that I could find it's a German book, French translation, and an English translation of that.
Oh, of the
by
French
somebody by someone who's not a very good translator. So it's it's all kinds of problems. Yeah, one of the stories is pretty good with a ventriloquist. So yeah. Yeah.
Of course, you would like the puppet story.
Right.
Exactly. My eyes were lit up.
Are you a big fan of evil puppets, just in general?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen Megan? No.
No, I haven't yet.
Okay. I think you'd like it.
I want to watch it and then listen to your guys' thing.
Oh, okay. What were we talking about? Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But so also, I've got a couple questions for you now, though.
Sure, please.
So we had Terror Frankenstein.
Yes.
And there's also Sex Madness Revealed.
Yes.
So how did that come about? Because I've got to say, like, I want more in this universe of yours, Tim. Like,
oh, good.
This like dark, like these innocent stories, kind of, sort of, but also they're a little twisted to begin with, and then they get more twisted at the deeper we go.
Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. I remember one of my favorite comments from when you guys were doing Terror Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. You said something about like, I love this world or something. I was like, oh, that feels good. So how did it come about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I finished Terror Frankenstein, and a friend showed it to a guy over at Kino, Brett Wood, he's the head of all the cult stuff.
Right.
And also a lot of their, the extra credits, extra stuff. And he was like, you should do another one. And then he was giving me this list of weird films. And I watched Six to Madness, and I was just like, oh, this is it, man. I got to do this. Because there already is a mystery as to who made it. Like, they don't really know.
Right.
So, because nobody cared.
Pretty much.
But it's such a weird movie because it's meandering. It's like a child telling a a scary story, It's like this thing, and then all of a sudden there's someone else is the main character, you guess.
Yeah.
Then they go away. Yeah. So I came up with that there was this secret, the Order, we called it, and it was all these wealthy people like Disney and so forth that would go to these brothels, basically these parties, and one of them was this LAPD vice cop who discovered this, and he decided to make a film of it, and so he could blackmail them all.
Right. Yes. So good.
And he doesn't have any actors or anything. He just uses guys that he's busted for marijuana or something. Yeah.
Or whatever other various crimes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, like Tara Frankenstein, I want to eke out the information as we go. So the bit, as you know, is Patton Oswalt plays the podcaster who watches a film every week and then talks about it.
Yeah, we appreciate the representation.
Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And then I had Rob Zabrecki. Do you know this guy, this actor?
So I read up on him. So he does.
Yeah.
He's an actor, obviously, and he's also a little bit of a magician.
Yeah, he's mostly a magician right now.
Well, I had the other way around.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah, he's at the Magic. There's a thing called the Magic Castle here, which is like the big deal for magicians, and he does these shows that often are very similar to this character that we have in play.
Okay.
Though he made it his own, but then he does seances and so forth, and he's about the opposite of the character.
Right.
He's a very, very fun, great guy. I love him.
Versus a possible a doctor. I don't want to reveal too much. I don't.
Yeah.
It's worth a listen or watch.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so he comes on the show saying that his grandfather was the director, and then we slowly
he tells all, basically.
Yeah. I'm glad you like it. I got to make one more at least.
Yeah, you do.
I remember last time you mentioned that you thought you might try to do like a Western for the last one. Is that?
Yeah, that was something I was really working on, and I thought I had a good idea for it, and it was like I was doing the problem of reverse engineering. Like I had an idea, let's find the movie, as opposed to watch a movie and like, oh wow, I can make this happen, So I need to reboot because I just fell in love with this idea that I had. So, but a Western would be interesting, right?
Yeah. I think that could. I like that each of these kind of explores and kind of tackles in different genre. Especially, Terror of Frankenstein is a horror movie, and then you kind of layer another horror story on top of it, and then like Sex Madness is more kind of like melodramatic. Yeah, and you kind of the story that you tell over that is way more over the top, and it fits, like the story matches with what you're building on. So I would definitely be interested to see what you would do in like a Western world.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll tell you the idea. It was such a good one. It was that there's a coup going on in some banana republic, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the person we're here talking is the general who's been in control for 20 years or something, and he's watching his favorite film and commenting on it as people keep coming in and they've taken the ballots and so forth, and he's in denial. He's like, get out of here, because the Western is sort of his childhood and all the stuff that he had. So yeah, I love that idea, but I just every film I find for it, I'm like, it wouldn't really work, and
I can like some kind of siege type, like peck and paw-ish thing, but like but you more want something that was public domain, so you could really go to town the way you were able to with Sex Madness.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd like it to be like a B movie where it's like it wraps up so easily, like The bad guy doesn't really have much. The good guy doesn't really have much. Not a problem, but he'll fix it.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Yeah, I would really, really like to see that.
Yeah, I'm gonna just get back to that. I just love it. Love that idea. I'll have to look around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. That makes me feel very good. I'm gonna really jump on that again.
Yeah, it seems like you've always got 2 or 3 things kind of percolating at any given time.
True.
Speaking of that, is what else is we've talked about one of the things, but do you got anything else you're working on right now?
Yeah, I'm working on a thing with some guys brought this to me, but I'm really interested. It's basically fucked up summer camp stories.
Okay.
And I think I reached out to you guys about this. If you had any messed up.
No.
No? Okay. If you guys have any good stories of just summer camp not, like going a little wrong, that would be something I'd love to talk. Or if you have friends, tell them that.
Yeah. I was in Boy Scouts and went to church camp every year when I was a kid, so I'm sure I can think of a few.
Okay, please do. Please do. Yeah, what about you, Eric?
No, I was definitely in Boy Scouts, and I have some camping stories that could probably be.
That's it. That's what mine was. It was a Boy Scout camping thing.
Yeah.
So is this a writing project, or are you trying to make a documentary?
It would be a doc, and maybe depending on what the other producer I'm working with is raising money right now, and depending on what we end up with, it would either be more like Room 237, where we had just voices talking and we would show images and so forth.
Okay.
Or if not, we might, have rent a summer camp in the off season for a week and just shoot all the stuff there, which would be a lot.
Oh yeah, that'd be really cool.
But just God, we're hearing some great stories. It's just so fun when you get them. But I won't tell them because I want you guys to have fresh thoughts here.
Oh, I've definitely got mine lined up. And the question now is, how big is your budget for animal handling?
Whoa! I'll roll with the dice on this one. Okay, I'm going to set up. Let's set up some calls in the future, and I'll do both of you guys.
Yeah. I really we kind of talked about this last time, but I really appreciate the way that you. It seems like most of the things that you have done are kind of like riding the line between fact and fiction. Like you find the moments of reality that feel like fiction, and you find like the true moments behind the fictional things. Like everything we've talked about. The Miami Vice incident is this real moment that's wrapped up in like a silly action TV show moment, and it's. I don't know. Like I don't know of another creator that does this thing the way that you do it so well.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, like going back to what Anthony said, like I was like, okay, this is a bit. When's the shoe going to drop and something crazy is going to happen? And then I started looking. I'm like, no, these are real people. These are real people. Everything happened. This is real.
Oh, with Miami.
Yeah, with the Miami.
Yeah. Well, it's so weird because I was just so fun to intercut with that show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's really cool that Tim actually kind of turned that around and like created a mental health service to go along with that. So
totally, and that's really his life right now. So and what I love is I didn't know that was coming, and I knew a little bit about his mother's death, but I wasn't sure I was going to feel comfortable asking him about it. But it's so fluidly just worked out of what we were talking about. So I feel, obviously I feel blessed that those guys were that open to me.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a therapy session that you were getting to kind of take part in. Like by the end of it, he kind of, I don't know that it's necessarily a spoiler, but like the last line of the movie, I don't want to give it away, but like the way that he really kind of owns what happened in the past and everything is like, the ending of it is like really made me happy. It was really, really nice.
Great. I love that ending.
Well, can I quote, because it's a hell of a line.
Sure.
Right. What's your name, chump? I'm Tim fucking Davis.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's going to be on Night Flight in October. It'll start if you get that Night Flight app or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So that'll be
I was
there.
wondering about, because, I mean, I know it's at festivals, but we probably have people who are listening who won't be able to get to one. But
yeah. So it'll be there. Fingers crossed. I think Kara Frankenstein might be on Night Flight pretty soon.
Ooh,
okay.
That's really exciting.
Great. Yeah. And then I'm looking at some other stuff for different venues, but I was really happy that those two, especially Miami Vice, I just get that out there right away after it runs the festivals.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
But yeah. So I got the fucked up summer camps, and I'm writing another book. Yeah, I'm looking around, but now I'm doing the third portion of my trilogy. Thanks to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll definitely have you back to talk about that whenever that is.
Cool.
So I got to ask you this though. This is just
please.
before we like, how do you maintain your consistency? Like you're just keeping the ball rolling, and like as someone with ADHD, like I push the ball, it goes to a good spot. It's like, that's a nice spot. And then I leave that ball alone and we'll never touch it again.
That's wild. I don't know. I mean, it's really, my productivity, I think it's very much just my life in the sense that I'm just constantly curious about some shit. And then I don't give up. I don't know why, but I just like the Frankenstein thing. Like I thought I made a movie. I should just quit. Now I'm back rereading and like thinking about it and and I just did a big deep dive into early LA jazz. I don't know anything about jazz, but I just was like, I read one book and I was like, God damn, I'd like to know more about these people. And so I had to track all this shit down. It's not going anywhere except, so I think that's it. It's a compulsion, really.
Okay.
But how's that different from you with the compulsion? I love the image of the ball that just pushed and that's it.
I mean, so with ADHD, like a lot of it is like novelty, right? So when I hyper focus on something, I'm beamed in,
right? And
I'll write about or I'll mess around with that for like 8 hours, 10 hours, probably for a whole month. And like I have a drawer full of 25,000 word novel of what would be novels, but they've stopped at about 25,000 words each and every one.
Wow.
So I get busy doing other stuff. I get distracted. So, and then I'm like, there's this other cool thing.
It's wild that it's the same number basically, right?
It is, yeah. Like, and I didn't even notice it was happening till like I got to third one, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is where the novelty and the dopamine in my brain wears out. Gotcha.
Is there any way to throw those partial pieces together into one thing?
No, they're so drastically different.
Okay.
They're so wildly different. Like, there's a couple that I have actually thought about doing with that, cobbling it together, like Frankensteining it together.
Yeah.
And they might work, but the third one just has nothing to do with that.
Well, because like that book Burnt that Anthony was talking about, I had this idea for a story about father-son relationship, right? And I kept thinking like, oh, I could set it in this time, or I could set it in this time, or, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do all three. And so I just did, and then I sort of pushed them together and made a story. So that was me dealing with my compulsion. Well, I'm sorry that won't work with you, because that's frustrating to have so much done there. That's pretty good writing.
One of these days, I'm going to go back to them saying, who knows?
I hope so.
Yeah, it is true. Like, I think that us doing this, it's just kind of like a 1 week at a time, and you don't have to like think about the long running thing, and there's no way to go back and edit. It's like once it's out, and that episode is done, and now we move on. Whereas I run into that where like I'll start to write and then it's like I'll lose track of it for a couple weeks and then I go back and I'm like, well, I might as well just start back at the beginning and go back through it all, and then I just keep rewriting the same 10 pages over and over again.
Oh yeah, and then when you're editing, it's like, oh, my writing is garbage. This is awful.
Oh boy.
Yeah, no. So what you're saying is don't listen to that voice.
Yeah, well, or I think all I do is edit. I write and then I'm constantly kind of like making notes for like what I'll do when I go back to it. So I'm already talking to that voice, saying, "Don't give up, man. Here we go." I already anticipated it.
Got it. That's smart.
Yeah, one question out of that is with the weekly show, right, in a different Frankenstein or Frankenstein-esque film. It's interesting just looking at the arc of your work. But it's interesting how it kind of evolves sort of organically into these different places, and then it kind of moves on to another. And do you guys, is that planned, or is that just like what we feel like doing, or
kind of planned, but a lot just kind of pops up.
Yeah, like I have a schedule that like. It's never really set in stone. Like I'll kind of try to group things like, oh, these kind of 2 or 3 things feel like they fit together in some way, whether it's like you said, the decade ones or whatever. But then every now and then something will come up unexpected and I'm like, all right, I'm going to just totally rearrange the next couple of weeks and fit this in. And, sometimes like we had, right after like the Dobbs announcement, which I guess was like a year ago now, everybody was pretty upset. There was a lot of weird feelings about like, female body autonomy in America. And we just coincidentally did a movie that was like all about that. And it was like, that was not planned in the least. And it was just the exact right time to have done that movie.
Right.
Serendipity and all that.
What led to Human Centipede?
that was kind of like my wife and I were kind of joking because sometimes when we would do like a series of like really similar ones back to back to back, it would be like, well, we're kind of running out of stuff to talk about with this because we're saying the same thing over and over again. And I was like, maybe we could do something sometime where like we alternated so it didn't feel so stagnant. And she kind of like, we were just kind of joking and stuff, and she was like, it would be great if you did like Hotel Transylvania and Human Centipede, because they're so drastically different and they're also both things that you wouldn't want to watch back to back to back because they would get very repetitive. And sure enough, that's what we found is like the Human Centipede movies continue to escalate and get grosser, and you kind of want to break between them. And the Hotel Transylvania movies just kind of keep telling the same story over and over again and kind of don't really build to anything. Right. So it was kind of nice to take a break between those as well. And
they definitely putter out at the end, as we discovered.
And it just seemed like such a ridiculous thing to do that when I mentioned it, I was like, Eric, I don't know if you're going to like this idea, but what do you think? And he was like, yes, we have to do it.
Yeah. And the bit became like, which one is the palate cleanser, right?
Right. Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah.
My daughter loves this song called Red Flags. Have you ever heard of this? It's a guy on a blind date, and it's going really well.
Oh, yes.
She says that her favorite movie is Human Centipede. And
okay.
It's weird.
Yeah.
What's next, if I dare ask?
We just recorded the episode. It's not out yet, but I Was a Teenage Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
And we're getting ready to do the sort of like sequel-ish movie to it, the How to Make a Monster.
Yeah, so this is our back-to-school special period, as we've...
we're going to do a couple like Frankenstein Goes to College type movies afterwards. There's a handful of them, so... we're interested, and there's a new movie coming out that I think will kind of fit in there that I'm hoping we can get our hands on and add to the mix, which is called The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. I don't know if you've seen anything about it. Like it looks, I mean, I think it's like a a black girl whose brother gets killed, and I'm not sure the circumstances, but I'm sure there's a lot of like, racial tension, political kind of stuff going on in it, and then she revives her brother and turns him into a Frankenstein monster. I haven't seen it yet, but I'd imagine it's going to be a pretty powerful film.
That sounds really good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, it played in a couple theaters, but nowhere near us. But I think it's supposed to come to video on demand very soon. So I think as soon as we can get access to it, we're going to have to do an episode about it.
Oh, yeah.
I think that may have been a book before,
if it is, to track that down too.
Yeah. Well, cool. And I'm still holding off for you guys to do Island of Frankenstein sometime.
It's on our list. We have, when we do that one, would you want to come on and just like talk about that, like one of our standard episodes?
Oh, absolutely. I would do it in a minute.
Okay.
I'd have to rewatch it because I just remember like going, what? It really just went so far and so shoddily, that I really, somehow it's really stuck with me. So I would do that in a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. We'll plan that out in advance and reach out to you and definitely have you do that with us. That'd be really fun.
Absolutely.
Cool. And I'm looking forward to the teenage werewolves, teenage Frankensteins and stuff. I'm way into that. That sounds very cool. Yeah.
That one is a fun movie. So we had a good time talking about that, especially getting to a more traditional Frankenstein movie after all the Hotel Transylvania and Human Centipede stuff.
Sure. I guess you guys got to go deep and then come out. And
yeah. We try to, if you do the same thing, like, even if it's just more straightforward Frankenstein stuff, you start to run out of things to say, but you mix some other stuff in there and it gives you new perspective. And when you come back to the Frankenstein stuff, you're like, oh, this kind of reminds me of the thing we saw in this, and keeps building.
The Ernest Frankenstein is great. That's a keeper.
There you go.
Keeper.
I like it.
Well, thanks so much.
Why haven't we seen like the teen versions of Frankenstein versus the werewolf? Because they were always I was a teenage werewolf, I was a teenage Frankenstein.
Right. Why did they ever come together? Yeah. And it's all universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird.
Well, sir, we appreciate you being on the show.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's so great to talk to you guys. It's really fun.
Yeah, we've been talking that we wanted to get you back on soon and just hadn't gotten around to it. And I was really excited when you reached out and were like, hey, you want to do this sometime soon? It's like, it's exciting to talk to you, and it's exciting that you were looking forward to talking to us too. So that was really nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I really was. So yeah, this has been a lot of fun and inspirational. So,
well, you are obviously welcome back anytime.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Well, I will catch you another time.
All right.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, Anthony, I guess we got to do our outro.
Okay.
So, Anthony, where can they find us?
So you can find us on all the socials at The Frankencast. You can email us at thefrankencast@gmail.com. And you can also find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast, where if you like these kind of, discussions that are less about a specific movie and just kind of free flowing, we got a lot more of that kind of stuff over there.
It's some wild conversations we have.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in that case, to be continued.
Looks like you survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Our theme music is by Vivek Abhishek. Thanks for listening.